So we are here to say that whether it is on climate or economic justice, whether it is housing rights or migrant rights, whether it is Palestine or right here at home, we are facing a joint agenda and we will push back against it. And so today we draw the line.
In cities across Canada, thousands of people took to the streets with one clear message: draw the line. From Ottawa to Vancouver, demonstrators are urging Prime Minister Mark Carney's government to step back from sweeping spending cuts and soaring military budgets. The protests are gaining national attention, and for good reason. They raise big questions. What's really at stake? How will Canadians feel the impact? And why is this happening now? Let's take a closer look.
Tonight, we begin with a large protest here in the capital this morning as part of a national movement called Draw the Line. Protesters marched through the streets, pushing back on Prime Minister Mark Carney's government agenda.
In Ottawa, the largest protest began outside the Prime Minister's office on Wellington Street. Hundreds of people carried banners, chanted, and even painted a giant mural with the words, "People, Peace, Planet, Not Profit." Police later confirmed the paint was washable, but the action still led to 2 arrests, and crews closed Wellington Street for cleanup.
Kimberly, the Ottawa Police Service says 2 people were arrested for mischief following the protest, and there was also a large mural painted outside the Prime Minister's office that read, "People, Peace, Planet, Not Profit."
United will never be defeated!
Among the marchers were seniors, students, and families. For many, the demonstration wasn't about one single issue. It was about a bigger picture, the kind of future they want for Canada. Some participants spoke about climate change and the urgency of government action. Others focused on healthcare, public services, or international peace. What united them was the sense that government priorities are shifting away from people's needs.
Liz Deacon and Carol Sulphur are seniors passionate about climate justice.
We want the federal government to work harder at some of these issues that need to be addressed and not just pay lip service.
That message of unity carried throughout the day. Organizers said what began as a climate rally quickly grew into something much larger. By Saturday, the coalition included labor unions, migrant justice groups, peace advocates, and people speaking out on international conflicts. Their goal was clear: to connect the dots between local service cuts, rising military spending, and the impact on ordinary Canadians.
It started out as a climate rally, but we realized that we need to build a much larger coalition. So it's about bringing in people who are standing in solidarity with Palestine. It's about bringing in people who are standing up for peace in the face of a potential quadrupling of military spending.
The timing of the protests is significant. Prime Minister Carney's government has pledged to find $25 billion in savings over the next 3 years. To understand the scale, that's roughly equal to Canada's entire annual budget for Indigenous services and Veterans Affairs combined. Independent researchers, including the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, estimate those savings could mean the loss of over 57,000 public service jobs by 2028. If those projections hold, the cuts wouldn't just be numbers on a page. They could translate into longer immigration application wait times, fewer inspectors for food safety, slower approvals for infrastructure projects, and less support for health programs. In short, Canadians could notice delays and disruptions in many of the services they rely on every day.
The proposed cuts to the federal public service aim to find $25 billion savings over 3 years, and
Unions, including the Canadian Union of Public Employees, have warned that these cuts would affect communities nationwide. They argue that local economies, especially smaller towns that depend on federal offices, could see job losses ripple outward, hurting not just government workers, but also local businesses. At the same time, the government is committing to a very different kind of investment. Carney has pledged to quadruple Canada's military spending, aiming to reach 5% of GDP by 2035. For context, Canada has historically spent around 1.3%, far below NATO's recommended 2% benchmark. If these plans move forward, Canada would surpass almost every NATO ally in proportional defense spending, placing it among the top contributors globally.
Billions in cuts to the public sector while quadrupling or announcing the quadrupling of military spending, while continuing to ship arms that end up contributing to the assault on Gaza.
Government officials argue the increase is necessary. They point to modernization needs in the Canadian Armed Forces, growing concerns about Arctic sovereignty, and rising global instability. Supporters of the plan say that in an era of new security threats, Canada must step up to meet its obligations to NATO and its allies. These protests weren't limited to Ottawa. In Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Edmonton, companion rallies echoed the same concerns. Marchers carried banners reading "Protect Communities" and "Stop the Cuts." In Toronto, speakers emphasized how public sector reductions could affect newcomers. In Vancouver, climate organizations tied the cuts to worries about Canada meeting its environmental goals. Economists say the debate reflects a broader global trend. In countries like the United States and the UK, governments are also grappling with the balance between fiscal restraint at home and rising defense costs abroad. What makes Canada's case unique, observers argue, is both the size of the proposed shift and the speed at which it's planned. A jump from 1.3% to 5% of GDP in just a decade would be one of the largest increases in NATO history. Back in Ottawa, the day ended with police confirming 2 people were arrested in connection with the mural outside the Prime Minister's office. Wellington Street was closed for several hours while cleanup crews worked to restore the roadway.
Gaza.
Police said 2 people were arrested for mischief in connection to the painting. Wellington Street was closed for the cleanup.
Still, for many protesters, the contrast is stark. They see cuts to services at home, while resources flow abroad into military commitments. This is why Saturday's movement stretched beyond climate activists. It drew in teachers, healthcare workers, peace advocates, and more. Their common message: Canada's priorities need to reflect people's everyday needs first. For organizers, this is just the beginning. They say more protests are planned as the fall budget approaches. The debate over austerity and defense priorities is far from over, and Canadians will likely hear much more about it in the coming weeks. For more updates on Canadian politics and stories shaping our future, check out our other videos on the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. We'll keep bringing you the stories that matter.